You want my Hurricanes football depth chart? You can have it with some bold predictions.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about a magical night on campus last night. Clutch wins happening at almost the same time by the basketball team and the baseball team with a walk-off in extras, and fans leaving the basketball game got to watch the end of the baseball game. How perfect was that? We'll talk about the latest buzz on possible defensive back coaches, running backs, tight ends coaches. Mario Cristobal runs his operations like the CIA. Very few leaks, but we'll talk about what we're hearing. And most importantly, I wanted to give you guys my prediction of the pre-spring football Miami Hurricanes depth chart, because Bruce Warner and we kind of critiqued somebody else's prediction yesterday. So I thought it was only fair that I put the work in and I grind out my depth chart. I went 3 deep at every single position. Now, when I say bold predictions, all right, there's a handful of starters that I project that go against the grain from others. And I'm going to give you guys players who aren't necessarily at the top of my depth chart who I think have an opportunity to work their way up. Because remember, this is pre-spring football. After I take in spring practices, I'm going to revise this. After I take in fall camp practices in a few months, I'm going to revise it again. This is going to be a work in progress, but I'm going to give you guys my somewhat educated opinions. And, of course, feel free to rip me to shreds in the comments if you don't like it. You're probably wrong, but feel free to rip me to shreds. So if you start at quarterback is one of the simpler ones, of course, to break down. Darian Mensah, coming off an almost 4,000-yard season, 34 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. We know he's quarterback 1, okay? I've got Luke Nickel as my quarterback 2, and I stand by that. I think the second-year signal caller at Miami, he's got an opportunity in a couple of years to be a starter. I think he's going to be your backup this year. I've got Judd Anderson as my 3rd string. And so, all right, so these only go 3 deep. I can only put 3. In me leaving off true freshman Darian Coleman, I'm not necessarily saying he's the 4th most talented quarterback on the roster. He's probably either 2nd most talented or 3rd most talented. But I have Darian Coleman as the 4th stringer because I strongly believe he's going to use a redshirt year this year, as he should, right? At that position at quarterback, he doesn't have to play this year. Allow Darian Coleman to use his red shirt. If you have a chance to maybe put him in late in the FAMU game or something without burning the red shirt, go ahead and do that. But I've got Darian, Luke, and Judd as my top 3 at quarterback. Running back is where it gets a little spicier. I'm definitely keeping Mark Fletcher as my number 1. I think Fletcher earned that last year, especially with the postseason he had. No doubt, Mark Fletcher is your starting running back at the U. Now, a lot of people would put, just based on the way last year's rotation played out, a lot of people would put Marty Brown as the 2nd stringer. I've got Girard Pringle as the number 2 and Marty Brown as the number 3. Pringle got multiple starts last year as a true freshman. Now, that was, typically in games that Fletcher was out injured. But the reason why I've got Pringle behind Fletcher is not only is Pringle, I believe, a starting caliber back at other schools, but the change of pace that he provides, the different characteristics he has from Fletcher, who's a bruiser, versus Girard Pringle, who's a lot shiftier and quicker. It makes sense for me to have Pringle as the number 2. Marty Brown is the number 3. Now, Brown is going to get on the field, especially in short yardage situations. So there's going to be a rotation. I've got Pringle ahead of Brown. Really, a couple of X factors in that room. I've got Jordan Lyle as my number 4. For running back, they let us go 5 deep on this is, by the way, the free tool on 4Q Green Tree, and I appreciate these guys for provide. So I could make my depth chart look somewhat professional without having any Photoshop skills or graphic design, nothing like that. They made it look this way. So Jordan Lyle at number 4, he's the wild card of all wild cards at running back. Because if Jordan Lyle, if he's fully healthy, and if he plays the way he played in 2024, he could be anywhere between a first or third stringer. So I'm just going to have him as number 4 until proven otherwise. And then I've got Javion Mallory over Chris Wheatley-Humphrey at number 5. I could go either way on that. I just think eventually Mallory is going to get himself into that rotation, maybe above Wheatley-Humphrey. I could easily be wrong about that, but Mallory is the true freshman. I'm really high on him, so that's why I put it that way. All right, so for your outside receivers, Cooper Barkate, he's got to earn it, of course, but I feel very strongly about Barkate coming in and earning a starting job. He, of course, and Darian Mensah have played together. That was Mensah's number 1 target at Duke last year. So I've got Cooper Barkate coming off an 1,100-yard season, backed up by Cam Vaughn, transfer from West Virginia, coming off a good year, and Samorian Wingo, the true freshman, as the third stringer. Now, Wingo is a possible wild card. So this is a guy that I cannot wait to watch in spring ball. The true freshman worked with the scout team in college football playoff practices. We didn't get to watch those practices, but heard he did really, really well. So Wingo is a possible mover. I've got him as a third string. Doesn't necessarily mean he's a third stringer for the full season. We'll keep an eye on him. That's just where I have him pre-spring right now, okay? Slot receiver, obviously Malachi Toney, the no-brainer of all no-brainers. He's a starter. Dalen Upshaw, I have backing him up. And then Vance Spafford, the true freshman, I've got a third stringer. I think Spafford is going to be a future really great slot receiver at Miami, has that 4.33 speed coming in as a true freshman, okay? The other outside receiver spot, this is a bold prediction. And you guys can tell me if I'm wrong about this because a lot of folks disagree with this pick. But I've got Joshua Moore, sophomore, organic, recruited talent at Miami. I've got Josh Moore as a starting receiver, and the reason why I have him there is his size profile, his ability to make contested catches and go deep, 6'4", 215-plus pounds. He's got size that the other receivers do not have. And Moore, played, somewhat sparingly this past season as a true freshman, practices really well. I'm going to make the bold prediction until proven otherwise. I'm going to stand in the paint on Josh Moore. I'm that high on him. I'm going to stand in the paint and say he's going to be a starter. If after I watch some spring practices, if I feel like I'm wrong about that, I'll let you guys know. Van Dravius, they call him Dre Jacobs. I've got him as the number 2. A lot of people project him as a starter. And Milan Paris, another true freshman, I have as the third there. So a couple of bold predictions at the wide receiver spots. At tight end, this one wasn't that difficult to project. We'll see what happens in spring ball. But, Elijah Lofton, who's got something to prove this year, I've got him as the starter. I've got Luka Gilbert heading into his second year as the backup, although that could flip, especially with Luka Gilbert having more of the conventional tight end body. Maybe he's the starter, and Lofton is kind of a utility guy. We'll see how that plays out. And then I've got true freshman Gavin Mueller as the third in that depth chart. Everybody's talking about him because he looks like $1 million in off-season workouts. Physically, he looks fantastic. I'll give you the offensive line when we come back because O-line is difficult for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's difficult because you're trying to put 4 new starters in out of 5. Number 2, it's difficult because everybody cross-trains with Alex Mirabal. So trying to project which guy is a backup at which position. Is he a backup center or a backup tackle or backup guard? But I gave you my old college try on that. We'll talk about the defense as well because I've got a few wild cards on defense. You want to keep it locked right here. We're talking Miami Hurricanes depth chart on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. You use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Guys, workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and that one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours just made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. You'll have less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Thank you for making the Locked On Network number one. And if you're an everydayer, you want to make your status official by joining the Everydayer Club. Join the all-access tier. The link is in the show notes below, or go to lockedoncanes.supercast.com. Get exclusive episodes, exclusive newsletters, one-on-one texting with me, and so many other great benefits at lockedoncanes.supercast.com. Become an all-access Everydayer today. All right, so taking a look at the offensive line on my pre-spring depth chart, and again, after I take in some spring ball next month, I'm gonna revise this if necessary. I'm gonna keep this depth chart fluid until the season starts with my predictions on it. This is how I see it before spring. So on the offensive line, on the left side, I've got my starters as Matthew McCoy at left tackle. I feel like I'm getting more buzz for him as the left tackle starter, and Samson Okunlola as the left guard starter. A couple of comments I got on social media where maybe you could flip that. I guess maybe you can, but again, I feel like I've heard more buzz from McCoy at tackle and Okunlola at guard, but I feel pretty good about both of them starting on the left side, however you flip it, right? So backing up McCoy at left tackle, Demetrius Campbell and Jaden Wilkerson is who I have there. Backing up Okunlola at left guard, I've got Max Buchanan, who is, I think, a rising star, and he's heading into his second year. Eventually, he's going to be a starter at Miami, if not this year. So I got Max Buchanan and Jonathan Klein, who's very versatile. Klein just transferred in. I think that's a guy who's going to be a backup at multiple spots, just so you know, and he could rotate. At center, I'm actually surprised at how many people disagree with this at center. You know, Ryan Rodriguez, who's back for, his 6th or 7th year. I think Rodriguez, to me, is the most likely center starter this year. Would be the first time in a long time, first time, I think, in 4 years that Miami would use someone who they didn't just bring in from the transfer portal. I see S.J. Alofaituli backing him up. I think SJ probably the following year will be the full-time starter at center, if not this year. And I've got Reese Woodrow also backing him up. I could go a couple different ways on that. Reese is a true freshman. I could also see true freshman J.J. Sparks, who projects as a center, possibly playing there. So that was a tough one. That's just how I put it down on paper. We'll revisit that one after spring ball. At right guard, I guess this is kind of a bold prediction because I'm definitely taking a leap of faith here because I haven't seen this guy practice, but Jamal Merriweather, who's an experienced rotational offensive lineman, transferred in from Georgia. I could see him winning a starting job, and right guard is probably the easiest spot for him to win. So I've got Merriweather penciled in at right guard. Ben Congdon coming in as a freshman. I take a leap of faith that he's going to get into that rotation. Juan Minaya, who I think can back up at multiple spots. I've got him in there. And then right tackle. This is not a bold prediction because most people are saying this, but I do have a true freshman phenom starting at right tackle this year. Number 1 recruit, Jackson Cantwell. Again, most people have Cantwell as a starter, so this is nothing bold on my part. And I've got Jaden Wilkerson, sophomore, and freshman Joel Irvin as backups on the offensive line. So that's my O-line. Let's take a look at my defense here, and I'll give you, some bold predictions and guys who I think can be risers on this side of the football. Starting defensive ends. This was not particularly difficult. I've got Damon Wilson starting, and I've got Marquise Lightfoot starting. I don't think anyone would argue Damon Wilson, transfer from Mizzou, transfer from Mizzou, coming off a 9-sack, 54 pressure season. He's probably going to start. I've got Armando Blunt backing him up. And just a note on Blunt, I don't have Blunt as a starter on my D-line. Maybe he can start, but whether he starts or not, I think Armando Blunt is going to be the primary backup at multiple positions, and Armando is going to play a lot. So just because I don't have Blunt as a starter doesn't mean he won't have an impact on this defensive line, because I strongly feel that he will, okay? So I've got Armando Blunt and third Scroggins behind Damon Wilson at one end. On the other end, I have Marquise Lightfoot starting, backed up by Hayden Lowe and Booker Pickett. Now, Hayden Lowe is an X factor, coming off injury. A year ago at this time, as a true freshman, spring football and fall camp was looking phenomenal. Like, he was a guy who was going to crack the rotation. He got injured before the season, missed the entire year. Lowe, to me, is going to be a primary backup, also may have a chance to start. He may try to take that spot from Marquise Lightfoot. At defensive tackle, my starters, Ahmad Moten Sr., who's a virtual lock to start, and Justin Scott, who played great last year as a backup. I believe Justin Scott will ascend into a full-time starting role this year. Backing up Moten, I've got Keona Davis, the transfer from Nebraska, who I think is going to play a lot. And Davis, by the way, can also be a defensive end backup, can play multiple spots. And I've got Jarquez Carter as a backup for both of those defensive tackle spots. So behind Justin Scott, I've got Armando Blunt and Jarquez Carter. Linebackers, the guy who's a lock to be a starter is Mo Toure. He's going to be your starting Mike linebacker, almost certainly. Kamal Bonner, I take a little bit of a leap of faith on him. Bonner barely played last year, was injured. I hear a lot of things about people being high on Bonner in Coral Gables, so I'm going to have Kamal Bonner as my will linebacker projected starter. We'll see how that plays out in spring practice. So backing up Toure, Kellen Wiley Jr., that's a name to watch. I believe Kellen Wiley at backup linebacker in his sophomore season is going to have a breakout year. Wiley, physically, he's a specimen, really, really smart, intelligent player who's got the size to back it up. I think Wiley is going to turn a lot of heads this year. Watch out for him. And I've got Chase Smith as a backup there. I have Chase Smith as a backup at both spots. So Chase Smith also behind Kamal Bonner and Cameron Bobby Pruitt. Watch out for him. I may have ranked Pruitt a little too low on my depth chart, to be honest. He's going to play quite a bit this year. Starting outside cornerbacks, O.J. Frederic and Xavier Lucas. That's pretty much a lock for both of those spots. Backing up Frederic, I have Ethan O'Connor, who comes off a good year, and Jabori Antoine, who's heading into his sophomore season, had some good moments as a freshman. Backing up Xavier Lucas, Damari Brown, and true freshman Jalen Seatbelt Waters. I think Seatbelt is going to find his way onto the field a little bit this year. That's a guy to watch out for as a true freshman. At the star or nickel position, most of the buzz is behind transfer from Boston College, Omar Thornton being the starter there. So I have him penciled in. I think Damari Brown and Conrad Hussey can also, actually there's a bunch of players you could play at star. That was a difficult position to rank because Dylan Day can play some there, Bryce Fitzgerald if needed. I mean, I think that's a testament to the versatility of Miami's defensive backs, that you've got a bunch of guys who can play multiple spots there. My starting safety spots: free safety Zechariah Poyser, strong safety Bryce Fitzgerald. I have Dylan Day and Conrad Hussey backing up Poyser, and I have the same backups. The same backups for strong safety as well. Conrad Hussey, that's going to be a guy I'm really intrigued to watch throughout spring ball because Hussey, again, has not had the career impact. 2 years at Florida State and a year at Oregon State, but Miami has oftentimes brought out the best in defensive backs the way they did with Keontae Scott and Jacoby Thomas last year. And Zechariah Poyser had a really good year, of course. And Damari Brown had a good year when he was on the field healthy. So you have to wonder if Conrad Hussey could find a bit of a reclamation this season at Miami, where he probably should have come to Miami regardless. I mean, he, made the mistake of choosing Florida State over Miami, probably wishes he was here, and he's going to get his opportunity. So you guys feel free to critique or agree with my projected depth chart in the comments below. And the other thing that we're going to take a try at in the coming days are special teams returners jobs. I mean, we know for punter, Dylan Joyce is back. Kicker, it's either going to be Jack Olson or Jake Weinberg, the two transfers. I would imagine Malachi Toney returning punts. We'll talk about who might be returning kicks with Keelan Marion gone. So we'll take a try at the special team stuff as well. Let's talk about the latest coaching buzz and a magical night for the basketball team and the baseball team playing within a quarter mile of one another at the same time last night. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. It was a heavyweight showdown between number 3 South Carolina and number 7 LSU, and the Gamecocks rose to the occasion. South Carolina secured a hard-fought 79-72 victory to stay atop the SEC standings, using a balanced offensive attack to outlast the Tigers. Tessa Johnson led the way with 21 points, while Raven Johnson added 19. Medina Okot dominated the paint with a double-double, finishing with 12 points and 17 rebounds, while Joyce Edwards chipped in 10 points to round out the scoring. With the statement win, the Gamecocks now turn their attention to a road matchup at number 23 Alabama on Thursday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I host that show, talking all the big stories, ACC football, ACC basketball. I mean, for Miami, basketball and baseball scored huge wins last night on campus. We'll talk about that in a second. I can't emphasize this enough. It makes it difficult for people like me to do our jobs, but I respect the way that Mario Cristobal runs his assistant coaching searches, because Mario, I believe, before he wound up in coaching, thought about becoming a CIA agent. Like, this is something he actually thought about training for, and he's got that CIA mentality. Loose lips sink ships. Mario does not let information get out about which coaches he's interviewing or looking to hire. So, listen, there is some buzz that's out there. In terms of defensive backs coach, we brought this up on the show a couple of times. I would not be surprised if a promotion from within happens at DB coach, because sometimes you don't have to look outside your building for the best candidates. And Terry Jefferson, who was an assistant defensive backs coach, but primarily focusing on the nickels last year, and of course, Keontae Scott, he helped Keontae Scott reach his full potential and is probably going to be a second-round draft pick, with Terry Jefferson getting an assist on that. So don't be surprised if Coach Jefferson could be someone to look at to get that promotion from within, to go from, assistant DB's coach to cornerbacks coach to be the co-DB coach with Will Harris. I think Terry Jefferson is someone to watch. But, yeah, I noticed my guy, Gabby Urrutia at Inside the U, brought a couple of other interesting names. And I get asked about this guy a lot. What about Patrick Sertain, who was surprisingly fired by Florida State? I don't know exactly what. Maybe, I don't know if Coach Sertan was the one that gave Mike Norvell that black eye last year. If so, bring him on down. But Sertan, I know Florida State obviously was not very good the last couple of years, but he did help coach a couple of future NFL DBs, and Sertan is an awesome recruiter. Okay, so, if former Miami Dolphin legend, would he want to reunite with Jason Taylor, his old friend and teammate, move back to South Florida? Because I'm sure he realized living in South Florida is a lot better than living in Tallahassee. No one would argue with that. So that could be a name to watch that was brought up there. At running backs coach, I saw Gary Furman at Kane Sport, brought up maybe Benedict Hippolyte, who's currently on the FIU staff, as someone you may look for there. I mean, honestly, if you're going to bring somebody in from the FIU staff, you guys know I'm a huge fan of Edwin Pata, friend of the show, who joined us a couple of weeks ago, who's the offensive line coach at FIU. He's a former tight end. So, I mean, that would be a guy that I would love to have at tight end coach. Tight end coach, I'm not sure what Miami's going to do there. If everybody is going to keep bringing up the name James Coley, who's currently at Georgia. He's South Floridian, coached high school down here, was it Al Golden's staff that James Coley was on for a while down here, can coach pretty much every position on the offense, including tight end. That's someone who also has offensive play calling experience. So if you were to bring him in, he could be the heir apparent maybe for Shannon Dawson, if Dawson were to ever get another job or promotion somewhere else, he could collaborate with Dawson. So I don't know, I haven't heard anything concrete about Coley actually being up for the job. I just know that that's a name people always, bring up when you have these sort of openings. But we'll see what happens. But again, I can't emphasize this enough. Mario is keeping these coaching searches very quiet, very secretive. And as a Miami guy, I actually appreciate that. But all right, we had a freaking magical night on campus last night. And man, it really makes me wish, and I know this is never going to happen because of Coral Gables and their laws about sporting venues, but could you imagine if we had an on-campus football stadium? We don't, but thankfully we do have an on-campus basketball arena and a legendary on-campus baseball park. And so you had happening almost simultaneously Miami men's basketball team with some adversity in the second half, because Malik Renew, your best player, missed most of the second half dealing with a migraine. But Trey Donaldson puts his Superman cape on. Donaldson scores 24 of his 32 points in the second half, including Miami's final 15 points and the game-winning free throw for the Hurricanes. Donaldson was spectacular. Miami comes from behind to beat Virginia Tech, and the Hurricanes have had a tremendous week over the last 7 days. The upset win against North Carolina, the upset win at North Carolina State. Those were both quad one wins, and you beat a bubble team of Virginia Tech at home last night in comeback fashion. The basketball team has absolutely secured their spot in the NCAA tournament. Unless they lose all of their remaining games, I don't see any way they even get back to the bubble. And so shortly after the basketball game ended, and this worked out amazingly well when it came from a timing standpoint, is when the basketball game ended, the baseball game against UCF at the Light, about a quarter mile away from the Watsco, the baseball game was still going on, okay? So Miami was down 5-0 until the late innings against UCF, pulled off a comeback. They take the game into extras. And even though the baseball game started at 6 and the basketball game started at 8, the basketball game ends before the baseball game. And a lot of folks at the basketball game were parked in the same garage, the Ponce garage. Or when they got out of the basketball game, they could hear the baseball game still going on. So you had thousands of extra people from the basketball game that got into the Light, or they're watching from the parking garage where you can see the Light from there. And they get to see Vance Shahan, transfer from SC Upstate. Miami's got some really impactful transfers. I mean, you saw what Alex Sosa has been doing so far from NC State. Miami gets a walk-off 2-run shot in the bottom of the 13th, and everybody got to celebrate it. Now, if you're one of those folks who left the basketball game dramatic victory and then caught the end of the baseball victory, you just had yourself one hell of a night. And shout out to you, because that was great. This is why I say we're in a golden era of Miami sports now. Football team has an incredible deep run. Basketball team now up to 21 wins in the Jay Lucas era first year. And the baseball team 4-0. They're stacked. It's great to be a Miami Hurricane, folks. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We are going to have another episode later today. We had to reschedule with a Hurricanes legend. Robert Bailey is going to join me and Bruce Warner probably in the evening tonight to talk about his glory days at Miami and his take on the current state of the program, because he follows it very, very closely. So make sure to smash that thumbs up button. Make sure to become a member of the Everydayer Club, all access tier. Hit the link in the show description below, and we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.